Greetings and welcome to the Inside Sports Illustrated podcast, where each week we go behind the stories of Sports Illustrated and SI.com. I'm Richard Deitcher, and our guest this week is the writer and author Jeff Benedict, who wrote this week's piece on Chicago high school basketball star Jabari Parker. Jeff is the author of a number of books. He's one of the country's foremost experts on athletes and crime. He's done a lot of work for Sports Illustrated in the past. You probably recognize his byline, and he also teaches writing and mass media at Southern Virginia University. I believe he still does that. Jeff Benedict joins us now by phone. And Jeff, let's start off with this. I find Jabari Parker a really interesting story. I did not know much about him before I read your piece. As you say in there, this is the best high school player since LeBron James. I mean, that in itself is fascinating, and we'll get a little bit into his religion in this podcast. But let's start off with just a general, why is this story important, and how did you come across Jabari Parker?
Well, why it's important, I think, it starts with the fact that he's so good as a basketball player. There's Kobe Bryant, there's LeBron James, and now there's this kid who is spoken in the same breath as those two, because at a very early age, he set himself so far apart from the rest of the class that you look at him as a once-in-a-generation type of player. The other thing about him is he's so good as a person. He is unusually humble. At least probably 20 different people that I encountered in Chicago while working on this story greeted me by saying, he's the most humble young man I've ever met. It was almost as if someone had programmed all these people to say this, but that is how everybody feels about him. The reason I wanted to do the story is because, I was intrigued by not only the fact that he's so good, but it's interesting that he's a practicing Mormon, as am I. So I had a particular keen interest in that element of his life, and it's a big element of his life. In fact, it has a lot to do with why he carries himself the way he does.
I'm going to get to that in a second, Jeff. Before I do, because you have seen him play, and many of the people listening to this have not, can you give a quick description of his game and why he is thought of so highly in terms of a prospect?
Absolutely. I can give you two plays that sort of capture him. One is a play I saw back in January. They were playing a league game at home at Simeon in Chicago. And it was a very close game against a good team. And one of his teammates, Jabari, actually stole the ball and gave it up to one of his teammates and then took off running towards his basket. The teammate threw it back to him. Jabari caught it just inside the three-point line and then took two steps. He never put the ball on the floor. He took two steps and elevated to the rim and threw it down. It was just an incredible dunk. And it happened so fast that a defensive player was completely out of position, and he was standing under the basket, and Jabari kind of came down on top of him when he dunked it. And the referee called an offensive foul on Parker. And the gym went nuts because it was obviously not an offensive foul, but Parker's reaction says a lot about the kind of player this kid is. As soon as the ref whistled it, instead of complaining or arguing or even making a face, he smiled and he turned around and ran to the bench because it was his second foul, and he knew that he needed to come out, so he didn't pick up a third before the half. Didn't have to be told. It was just, first of all, like an NBA-type play, and then a very unusual reaction to a bad call. Another play that I saw that sort of tells you what kind of player he is, he gets triple-teamed a lot because he can go up way outside the three-point line, and he has such a good handle with both hands, and he's so quick, and he can shoot from way out there that he's very difficult to guard. And so he gets triple and double teamed a lot. There was one play where he was down on the low post. The ball got dumped into him. Three defenders collapsed on him, and Jabari had turned left toward the baseline and was basically going to get pushed out of bounds. He had nowhere to go. And without looking, he flipped the ball over his shoulder and hit a cutter who was coming down the lane, who caught the ball and just laid it in uncontested. And it's just, it tells you that this is a kid at age 17 who knows how to dominate a game without scoring 50 points. He can score 50, but a lot of times you'll see him get 10 assists in a game. He loves to pass.
It's going to be interesting to see this kid mature for sure as a player. All right, Jabari, as you mentioned, he belongs to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In the piece, he says, basketball is what I do. It's not who I am. You spend time with the family, so one, give us a sense how much time you spent with them, and then when you're doing that, how does faith dictate his life, and how vocal is he about his faith?
Well, let me work reverse on those questions. He's not vocal about his faith at all, which is one of the reasons I liked him so much. He doesn't wear his religion on his sleeve. He just quietly goes about his business and conducts himself in a way that everybody from the mayor of Chicago to the janitor of Simeon High School says, this kid is just the nicest kid you'll ever meet. So he doesn't vocalize his faith. He just quietly lives it. How big of a part of his life is it? It's a huge part of his life. I mean, he gets up at 5:30 in the morning and goes to a Bible study class at the Mormon Church in Chicago. He does that at 6 o'clock, and he does that naturally before he goes to the Simeon High School for a regular full day of classes. He carries the Book of Mormon around in his backpack. It goes everywhere with him. And he spends his Sundays doing things that most teenage kids don't do. I mean, you might find Jabari Parker at a nursing home on the South Side visiting an old lady with the bishop from the Mormon Church. It's the kind of thing he does quietly. I think when you see him on the court and you see a kid who's that good and he's always got a smile on his face, even when he dunks the ball, he doesn't dunk it in a sort of vicious way. I mean, he can throw it down as hard as anybody, and he's as tough as anybody you'll ever see on the court. But he has this mannerism about him that tells you there's something different about this kid. And I just, to be honest with you, as a guy who's watched an awful lot of high school and college basketball games, it's kind of refreshing, and all the scouts say the same thing about him. It's nice to see a kid who acts that way on the basketball court. His teammates love to play with him because he's so unselfish when he's on the basketball court. And most of the time when you want to interview him after the game, he constantly is trying to deflect and have you interview his teammates.
Jeff, how much time did you spend with the family in terms of reporting the story?
I spent a lot of time with them. When I'd go out there the first time I went out there for a weekend, and I basically went everywhere with them. If I wasn't with, I saw Jabari at high school. I went to the barbershop with him. Of course, I went to practice and games with him. I went out to dinner. Basically, just did everything the family does. And then I spent a lot of time with his parents. I mean, one day, all I did was drive around in a car with Sonny Parker, his dad, who just took me all over Chicago and basically just gave me the lay of the land and what means what to the family and why. I traveled with the family as well to Southern Illinois when Jabari played in the state tournament back in March. So I got to see them in a lot of different settings, and you really get a feel for a family when you spend that much time with them.
How much do you think it was a factor that you're a Mormon in terms of them trusting you as a writer?
A lot. To be honest with you, because when I approached the family in the beginning, I was very upfront about what I wanted to do in this piece. I told them I don't just want to write a basketball piece. I want to write something that's much more intimate than that. I want people to sort of climb inside the life of Jabari Parker and see how he lives. And obviously, I knew going in that Mormonism is a major element there, and so I think it helped a lot that I am one, and I understand this religion, and I also understand that there's a lot of misperceptions about this religion. And I think it helped them to know going in that they weren't going to have to deal with the misperceptions.
As you mentioned in the piece, Anthony Davis and Derrick Rose, two very big stars, high school stars coming out of Chicago, went to Kentucky. Obviously, John Calipari is going to be interested in Jabari, as I imagine the Kansases of the world, North Carolinas, etc. Has he given any indication yet as to where he would be leaning to play in college?
No. It's a decision that he is going to make at the end of the summer and announce in the fall. And, this is a young man who's got a lot of big decisions ahead of him, and that's one of them. But obviously all these teams and their coaches know all about him. When I was working on this story, it wasn't unusual to see some of those coaches. They'd either been there the night before I was there, or some of them were there when I was there. But they know him very well.
Jeff, what are his parents? It's interesting. In the piece, you quoted both Danny Ainge and Dave Checketts, both Mormons, I believe, who said that they don't believe that a mission is for everybody. The idea that obviously after a year of school, Jabari would go 2 years somewhere in this world, as many Mormons do. I'm not sure if there will ever be another athlete, or if there has been another athlete who could be a lottery pick in the NBA and has to weigh that against going on a mission. Jabari is still young. This decision won't come for a little bit. But did you get any sense of how his parents feel about this and the idea of what he should do after 1 year of school?
Yeah, we talked a lot about that, actually, and it's a huge decision for him. And he'll have to make the decision in 2 years, because that's when he turns 19. And I think that one of the things I really like about this family dynamic is Jabari's father is not a Mormon. Jabari's mother is a Mormon. And all of his brother and his two sisters are Mormons as well. But Sonny Parker goes to the Mormon church in Chicago with the family every week. He loves the congregation that Jabari belongs to. And I think both his parents, they have an enormous amount of trust in their son, and they trust him to make the decision, and it's his decision to make. And my take on this is that there really isn't a wrong decision for him. He has two good options. And if he decides to take 2 years off and go on a mission, I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think if he decides not to go on a mission and he goes right into the NBA, that's not a bad thing either. I mean, this is a kid who's got two good options in front of him.
All right, as we finish up with you, Jeff, this is something pretty interesting to me. Is it correct that he would be the first African-American Mormon in the NBA?
It is.
All right. Mormonism obviously is going to be front and center in this country with Mitt Romney running against Barack Obama this fall. I don't put Jabari Parker, obviously, in that conversation yet because he's still a high school student. But I bring up Romney because I think some of this is going to be discussed in terms of this religion. And if you project Jabari Parker in 2 years going to the NBA, and if he could be this good a player, what do you think this means for Mormonism, just in terms of having that kind of high-profile athlete in the NBA? I mean, it's pretty fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. The truth of the matter is, what I find really interesting about this is obviously there have been other Mormon athletes who've been very successful, from Merlin Olsen, to Steve Young and Danny Ainge and Jimmer Fredette. I mean, there's plenty of them. Jabari is different because there is something distinctive about being the first African-American Mormon to play in the NBA. And the NBA is such a high-profile league. And I think that he has a message, quite frankly, that is so appealing to so many youth and so many adults. And when I say he has a message, I don't necessarily mean he has something to say. I'm talking about just the way he lives and conducts his life. It is going to be on display as he continues to go up the ladder here and he goes to a premier college and then into the league. People will be watching him. He knows that. But this is someone who, for the last 3 or 4 years, has been in the limelight in Chicago, one of the biggest cities in the country, and probably the big basketball town that we have in this country. And he's been in that environment, and everybody there respects him for what he is. I mean, I talked to Mayor Rahm Emanuel about this, and he said Jabari Parker is like the ultimate role model for youth. And it's his family upbringing that's really put him there.
And that brings me to my last question, Jeff. And you cited Rahm Emanuel, obviously. So he's obviously being noticed by some very prominent people. As popular as he is now, that popularity is going to get exponentially greater in the next 2 years. Do you think, from obviously spending time with the family, are they geared up, or is it do they have the structure in place? Even being in Sports Illustrated, this will kind of even be a game-changing article, I imagine, because there are people in Seattle or Maine who have never heard of Jabari Parker, who this week will have heard of this kid.
No question. And I think in fairness, if we all are honest, you can't totally prepare for the big spotlight that comes with national media because, for one thing, is you never know exactly how that's all going to go. It's rather unpredictable. But I think this family has a great grounding about them. Jabari's father played in the NBA for 7 years. It's not like he's new to the limelight that comes with professional sports. And his mother is just incredibly focused on keeping Jabari grounded on the things that matter most. This is not a family that is sort of, shall we say, starstruck. I think that their focus is on much more simpler things. And so I think they'll do a very good job, as well as you can at least, with the kind of spotlight he'll be under.
The writer Jeff Benedict wrote this week's piece on Chicago high school basketball star Jabari Parker. I imagine that is a name that, after this story comes out, is going to be on the lips of a lot of basketball fans. Jeff, of course, his work has been featured in Sports Illustrated many times. You've read him before. He's one of the country's foremost experts on athletes and crime, the author of a number of books, and always does fantastic work when he's in this magazine. Jeff, a really interesting story and obviously a very personal story given you are a Mormon as well. Thank you for the time on the Inside Sports Illustrated podcast, and I imagine we will have you back on again soon.
Thank you.
All right, back in studio as we wrap up. Our thanks to Jeff Benedict. Again, I did not know much about Jabari Parker. I find this story really, really interesting, and I think you will too, having read this, and if you're listening to this, you have no doubt read the story. The producer, as always, is the great Nolan Thomas. I'm Richard Deitch. We'll see you next time on the Inside Sports Illustrated podcast.